So in the last class, we ended at defects, right? Defects in welds. So, but actually, there are two topics that we did not cover. That is laser welding, right? Laser beam welding, to be exact, and also forge welding, right? So let us have a look at those, and then we'll come back to these weld types. I'm sorry, welding defects. Okay. So you see, laser beam welding, right? Uh, this does not belong to any what do you call broad category, as we had arc welding as a major category and other. Uh, I mean the laser. I'm sorry, these welding types that were there in that category of arc welding were what you had submerged arc welding, right? And then this metal inert gas welding or MIG welding, and there was even tungsten inert gas welding, TIG welding. So all those were under the what do you call this umbrella, we can call it. All those we were in the category of this arc welding. So this is, and there are other kinds like, for example, resistance welding, wherein you had spot welding, flash butt welding, and seam welding, etc. Right? So, and soldering and brazing were under one major category. Explosive welding was another different one. Like just as you have different explosive welding, you have this laser beam welding, right? This is kind of a miscellaneous type we can call, wherein laser beam is used, right, to melt the base metals and join them. That is what is happening here. So we'll see what is this laser beam welding. It is a process that melts and joins metal by heating them with a laser beam, right? So with the help of a laser beam, we are trying to melt and join metal, right? So that laser beam, how is it produced? Either by a solid state laser or a gas laser. So these are the two methods or two ways to produce that laser beam, right? Solid state laser or gas laser. In either case, the laser beam can be focused and directed by optical means to achieve high power densities, right? So in those two cases, in both of those two cases, what we are having is a laser beam that will be focused, right, with the help of some components, right, elements, we'll see. And then it is directed by optical means, right? So you have to, you will focus it and then direct it to that spot wherein the base metals have to be joined. So to achieve high power densities, right? That power, laser power, you're trying to densify it, we can call it, right? Make it dense so that it points to some particular spot, and because of the intensity or the density, high power density, the base metal is melted. In a solid state laser, a single crystal is doped with small concentrations of transition elements or rare earth elements, right? So what happens in a solid state laser is you have a single crystal that is doped with small concentrations of transition elements, is what we are calling it. So those are what we'll see the process as well, right? How they are able to produce that power, right? And for instance, for example, in a YAG laser, right, the crystal of yttrium, aluminum, and garnet. That's what gives it the name YAG. It is a crystal of yttrium, aluminum, and garnet that is doped with neodymium, right? Neodymium. So that's that transition element or rare earth element is this neodymium. The electrons of the dopant element can be selectively excited, right? That's what is happening here. Excitation. We have learned this excitation, right, in physics, elementary physics. So they are excited to higher energy levels, right? They were initially at low energy levels, and then because of this excitation, they move on to higher energy levels upon exposure to high intensity flash lamps. That is the exciting source. As shown in the next figure, we will see. So you see here, this is the laser beam welding process and then energy absorption here. This one is a process, and here the energy absorption, what do you call it, process, how is it taking place. So you see, this is your crystal, right? This is the high intensity flash lamp for exciting those crystals, right? So this power source, right, is what gives this flash lamp, what do you call, the power, and hence this what do you call, excites the crystal, right? You have a reflecting mirror there, so that this is a completely reflecting mirror is what we can call it, right? And this one is a partially reflecting mirror, so it allows some what do you call, electrons to pass. We have the focusing lens so that it can be focused, and the density can be increased so that it melts this base metal. The travel direction is, I mean, you're trying to have this beam from this left end to the right end, right? That is your that is how you're trying to weld. And this is a cooling system just so that to basically moderate the process, right? Just as you have a cooling system in a nuclear reactor, right? You have this here as well. And we even have this cooling kind of system in automobiles, right? That is radiator, a similar thing. So now, so you see the other part is the energy absorption. How is that? How are those? I mean, what is the inside process? So you see, these are what do you call, outer electron energy levels, right? You have a nucleus here, right? And then you had orbits. If you remember elementary physics, you have orbits around nucleus. So those orbits carry electrons, right? So these are called inner electrons, which are near to the nucleus. And then you have ground. I'm sorry. As you move outside, you call them outer electron energy levels, right? So you see the inner electrons, right, which are the normal electron orbits, and then you have ground state, intermediate state, and excited state, right? So as they move on to higher energy levels, the what do you call, you see here this one, energy absorbed from flash lamp. As they absorb energy from the flash lamp, they move away from the nucleus to the higher energy levels, right? That's what is happening, that upon the absorption of energy from the flash lamp, these electrons are moving to the outermost orbit, and therefore we are calling them excited. You see here, excited. As they move, ground state, intermediate stage, excited state. So when they are moving from away from the nucleus, they are absorbing the energy, right? Because of the energy absorption, they are moving outside. If they are coming from the outer orbits to the inner one, they will emit the energy, right? Because they are at a higher energy level. When they move on to lower ones, they will emit the energy what they had earlier. And that energy emitted is as light. Basically, light consists of photons, right? So that's how. And a laser, this lasing occurs. What we can call the laser action is called lasing here. That lasing occurs when the excited electrons return to their normal energy state, as shown in figure. As I told you, when they move on from higher energy levels to the lower ones, energy is emitted in the form of excited electrons, right? So is this clear? Okay. You see, so that was the process, how it was happening, how the beam is generated. Now here, you see, once the beam is generated, you're trying to, what do you call, focus it to the weld spot. So you have these two, what do you call, pieces which are to be welded, right? So this laser beam, you see, it is basically traveling from, I mean, all through the, what do you call this, interface zone, right? Wherein these two base metals are to be joined, right? So this beam will pass through that portion, right? And therefore it melts the, what do you call, the surrounding areas which are to be melted, right, of the base metal. So as the beam travels from here to there, you can see there's a weld pool. This is a cross section of weld. Why we are going cross section? Because it is not happening just at the surface. This beam is going throughout the piece, the base metal. Therefore, if you look at it from here, the cross section of the weld will be like this, right? So it goes throughout. If you cut it, you see that plane is what you're seeing. If you cut it through that plane, right, then we can see the cross section of the weld. So this is laser beam welding with CO2 laser, right? This is the process, and then the weld, as you can see, image weld in 13 mm thick A633 steel, right? So that is taken from this either journal or it might be a company, right? So they provide the images as well once they do the laser beam welding. So we can see the cross section of the weld, or this could be a top portion, right? Depends. It's not specified whether it is a cross section as you are seeing here, or it is a top portion. Unsure, but this is what it looks like. You can see the change in color, right? This is your weld zone, the fusion zone, basically where it has melted, and this could be the heat affected zone. It has changed in color, right? Because of the intensity of the beam around this weld zone, right? So you have a change of properties and therefore basically change of color, right? So you see what is happening in this laser beam welding is this reflectivity concept. We will see that very high reflectivity of the laser beam by the metal surface is a well-known problem. As much as about 95% of the CO2 beam power can be reflected by a polished metal surface. So when you have the base metal as a polished polished metal surface, then there is a problem with reflectivity, right? It is about almost 95% of that beam power, right, which is being projected is reflected by that metal surface when we are trying to send that beam to the base metal zone. This is basically reflected. So that is slightly, this reflectivity is slightly lower with the YAG laser beam, right? We have discussed what is YAG, right? The type of laser, the different components it has, yttrium, and garnet was G, A for aluminum. Yes, so that has a slightly lower reflectivity. What can be done to reduce it? Surface modifications such as roughening, oxidizing, and coating can reduce reflectivity significantly, right? So a major decrease in this reflectivity problem can be seen. That's why we say reflectivity is significantly reduced because of either you roughen it, right? Do not make it much smooth, roughening, right? And basically surface roughness is what we're talking about. Oxidizing is one another thing that you can do, in coating also. These are all things that we can do to reduce the reflectivity so that we can utilize maximum amount of this laser beam power. Once keyholing is established, absorption is high because the beam is trapped inside the hole by internal reflection, isn't it? That keyholing, what we're talking about is the insertion of this, you see here, keyhole. So once the beam passes from this weld zone, I mean this interface zone, right? Once it goes inside, then it cannot reflect, right? It can reflect only at the beginning when it is hitting the base metal, right? You can see the top one here. This is where the reflectivity problem is seen. But when it goes inside, right, there is no reflectivity problem. So if only you can manage this problem at the top surface, you can solve it, then the beam can go inside. So that is what is happening here, right? So after keyholing, the beam is trapped and therefore there is no internal reflection, right? The beam is completely absorbed. The power of the beam is completely absorbed by the base metal, right? Now, as for the advantages and disadvantages, you see, like EBW, what is EBW? Electron beam welding. We have not discussed this type of welding because it is not there in the syllabus. But just to have a comparison there, if you want to look up EBW, you're free to do so. Right, electron beam welding. So instead of laser beam, an electron beam is used. That's all. Right. So just like EBW, LBW can produce deep and narrow welds. Right. We can see that. You see how deep it is going because of the laser beam power. They're able to achieve that it can go to deep and narrow welds, right? Not wide, narrow, having small gaps. So, and at high welding speeds, right? Because of the power of the laser, you are able to achieve, I mean, you are able to go for deeper welds, narrow welds, and that too at high welding speeds. This is another major, what do you call, advantage that you get. Because the welding speed, as we know in arc welding, is limited by the current that we can supply and the material constraints we have, etc. So here you can move on with higher welding speed if the material is not constrained, right? But there the current, etc., would where the issues in arc welding. Here, because of the laser beam power, we can move with high welding speed because it is able to generate that much power in small amount of time. And also the heat affected zone is narrow here because of the focusing of the beam, right? You have a narrow heat affected zone. So we are only able to, we are having control over the weld zone. And that's why less heat affected zone, basically narrow heat affected zone. There's little distortion of the workpiece also. Because it follows, right? Consequently, if the heat affected zone is small, right, then the distortion of the workpiece will also be small because less area is affected and there is less chance of distortion. Probability of distortion is less. It can be used for welding dissimilar metals or parts varying greatly in mass and size, right? So dissimilar metals, those which are having different, it speaks of itself, right? Dissimilar metals having different, what do you call, compositions. Like for example, one could be steel, the other could be aluminum, right? That's what we mean here. So because they are having different melting points, that is what is the problem, right? So this is very well suited for this, for welding dissimilar metals or parts varying greatly in mass and size, right? Both mass, that is weight, and the size of it. So if you have a variation, then even that can be accommodated here. Unlike electron beam welding, however, vacuum and X-ray shielding are not required in LBW here. Because you see, in laser beam welding, we are not using any vacuum or X-ray shielding, which was the case in electron beam welding, right? So that is another, because lesser number of parts, lesser what do you call, chance of failure, and lesser is the cost, lesser is the maintenance cost. So lesser the parts, it is better, right? Usually. However, the very high reflectivity of laser beam by the metal surface is a major drawback, and as already we mentioned, right? We have discussed the reflectivity drawback. Like EBW, the equipment cost is very high here, and precise joint fit up and alignment are required. The cost is very high of the setup, right? Costly, expensive equipment, unlike your arc welding or other types of welding, right? MIG, TIG, etc. You have the equipment cost high comparatively. And the precise joint fit up and alignment are required here. You see, because of that laser beam being very critical, it can pierce through anything, right? Not just metal. If it is able to pierce through metal, then it is able to pierce through any other material, right? For example, plastic or wood or even human hands, right? If you are not having enough control and not able to manipulate the laser beam or basically align it, right? And you're not able to properly have the joint fit up, right? If the base metals are not in proper place, then the laser beam could be a chaos, you can see, right? So precise joint fit up and alignment are required, right? Those are critical to the functioning of this laser beam welding. Is this clear? I think that's the last slide. Yes, laser beam welding. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay. So you see, next type of welding is forge welding, or basically the last type here that we'll discuss. Forge welding, right? It's a combination of heat, timing of what? Timing of mechanical force, and surface preparation, right? These three are key aspects when it comes to forge welding. So what is happening basically is, you can see here the bottom image, right? You have this anvil, basically the resting or the bed, you can call it, right? Wherein the base metals will be kept and a hammer is used, right, to join the two. So you are giving heat, right? You are heating up the metals. You are having this force. The timing of the force is important. That's why we are seeing combination of heat. How much heat to give so that these two can what do you call to be able to take them to a state where they can join, right? Heat, amount of heat is important. Timing of the force is important, right? For how much time should you hit and what time you should hit, right? Upon reaching what temperature, for example. And the surface preparation, this is also another important aspect. So the heat sources could be, they're generally gas, basically propane or natural gas, right? To be able to heat up the base metals. And even coke, right? Coal or coke. These are also the ways or sources of generating the heat. Welding is a little more difficult in gas fires because of temperature limitations, because you see here there are two things, gas or coal or coke, right? So when it comes to gas, it's a little bit little difficult, they're saying, because of temperature limitations, right? And the fact that gas fires tend to be oxidizing, so therefore you have issues, right, because of oxidation. Scales or what do you call, oxides being formed that will what do you call, remain as impurities, and therefore stress concentration and etc. Right, all these problems. So it's a little difficult in gas fires because of temperature limitation, also that the temperature that we can achieve, right? So you see here this image, the right side image, basically a description of what is happening. It will help us in understanding the exact working of this welding technique. Here you can see the two metal pieces first get heated, right? You see here they're basically in a heated state, and then the hammer is used to join the two metal pieces. This is the basic philosophy of forge welding, right? So when welding in a gas fire, preheat the material to a bright red heat and brush it, right? If you're using gas fire, right, you heat the metals. So basically, we are trying to preheat it first to a bright red heat and then brush it. Flux is then applied. So if flux does not melt, then heat is insufficient. You see the criteria to decide uh, how much temperature should be kept. One criteria is flux has to melt. If the flux does not melt, then you conclude that the heat is inefficient, right? Insufficient. So the second step is flux is applied, okay, and the piece is returned to the fire again. Allow the piece to remain in the fire until a full welding heat with lemon yellow color is reached, right? Usually based on the color, they'll decide what to do next. So it will remain in the fire until a full welding heat with lemon or yellow color is reached, and then the piece is removed, immediately welded on the anvil with quick light blows with the help of hammer, isn't it? So you hit it, right? Quick light blows, so that they will join, right? As the material cools, force of the blows is increased. So as it is cooling, basically because of degrees of temperature, right, it is transferring the heat from its own what do you call, body, that is basically the weld metal, base metal. They are transferring the heat from itself to surrounding. So therefore the temperature drops down. So that when the cooling is happening, you are trying to increase the force of the blows. Initially it was less, the force was less. But as it is cooling, you try to increase the force of the blows. Okay. Now a second finishing heat may be necessary to blend the weld seams, right, and reduce material to desired dimension. So it depends on what material you're trying to do and what thickness you're trying to weld. Because more thicknesses it may require a second finishing heat. Otherwise, only first finishing heat is enough. So that may be necessary to blend the weld seams, right, and reduce material to desired dimensions. If you are having more problems with dimension control, if the dimensions are quite high than required, then you can even go for second finishing. That's what it's trying to say. Now, surface preparation consists of scarfing, cleaning, and fluxing, right? Surface preparation we have already discussed, right? So what it consists of is scarfing, cleaning, and fluxing. The scarf is the preparation of forging the material so that it fits tightly together and allows for stock reduction while forge welding. So we'll see how that scarfing is done. It is basically the preparation of forging this material, right? Preparation of the material to forge it so that it fits tightly together. So we'll see, you will have those kind of projections, right? So that they match. The final surface preparation is to apply flux, right? It also counts as surface preparation, isn't it? Fluxing. The job of the flux is to keep the material clean while it reaches the welding heat, right? As we know, in the earlier case we have seen, flux tries to shield the material. So it will keep it clean while reaching this welding heat. Apply enough flux to cover the entire joint. This is an important point. The joint has to be covered, right? Apply enough flux to cover the entire joint. Otherwise, you will have what do you call improper weld. You see here, we were talking about scarfing, right? If you prepare a scarf of your choice, so basically, we are going through the steps, right? So this is what is done here. You see the shape that is done. So this is called scarfing. If I can draw it, you can understand well with a red color. You see here, this is the shape of the scarf, right? The bottom portion is this one, and the top portion is. Let me draw with another color. It is green color. Right? That is what is done. This is scarfing, right? Preparation of that projection and recess. That is the first step. Second step, sprinkle enough compound to scarf on what do you call to seal the joint, right? We're talking about applying flux, right? So that is done after heating it, and then with light hammer blows, finish the weld, right? The hammer you see here in the fourth step, you can see the hammer. So basically, once it becomes this, we're talking about lemon or yellow color, right? This is the color that we are trying to say. So as it is cooling down, you're trying to hit it with a hammer, right? Light hammer blows, finish the weld, use a second heat and weld if you want to dress up the weld, right? Or only for what do you call finishing it up, you can use the second heat if required. So that's basically the final forged welded component. You can see here, right, how it has been done. Probably it is the top side, is it? No, it is the bottom side, right? That's the bottom side. So that is how this final component would look like, right? Joint, final forged welded component. Is that clear, forged welding, or do we have doubts? I basically put these steps so that you can understand with images what is happening, how it is done. No doubts. So you see, we have started this defects, right? We discussed in the last class. We discussed, yes, this porous welds, right, and poor penetration, as you can see, the reasons for it and what we can do to eliminate those. Yes, we had seen until that. Now warping. You know what is warping, right? Changing of shape, distortion. We can also call warping as distortion. So the shape is changing. You see here, this is first base metal. Probably you're not able to get what this is trying to say. This is your first base metal, and that other side is another base metal. They are welded exactly in the middle. Here they are welded, right? Now you see what is happened. This has become twisted, right? If you observe, you see, distorted, right? Observe how is the shape distorted, right? It's not straight, distorted, bent, right? This warping. What are the causes of warping? We'll see. The shrinkage of the weld metal, that is the first thing, isn't it? When it shrinks, right? If this portion shrinks and this portion shrinks, or for example, I mean, initially you would have lesser this heat, right? Because the weld had just started, or maybe it could be because of change of speed, the welding speed that you're doing, basically the torch speed, the speed at which you're taking the torch, like that, right? So all those factors will lead to shrinkage problem, right? So the first thing that causes warping could be shrinkage, right? That is one thing. Another thing, faulty clamping of parts. If you have not clamped them properly, you have to clamp before welding. If you have not clamped, then you're allowing them to what do you call, distort, right? So that thing. And faulty preparation, right? Preparation in the sense the joints are not made properly, and cleaning is not done properly, right? Because of impurities or any other substances, foreign substances inside the weld, that it is either shrinking more in one side, like that, right? These are all possibilities. And overheating at the joint, that is also another thing. If there is overheating, then basically if you try to cool it down, it will take more time. More time indicates you have more chance of distortion, right? So overheating at joint even is one factor. What are the cues? Clean joint edges before welding, or probably this is clean, I believe, not clean, right? So clean the joints, that counts as, I mean, compensates the faulty preparation, right? Counteracts. Weld rapidly, right, at higher speeds, right, so that you can avoid this overheating. Avoid excessive space between parts, right? If there's much space, then also this problem arises because of more surface area exposed to the environment, right? Clamp parts properly, right? That is your faulty clamping of parts. You can just clamp them properly so that you don't have that problem. And back up to cool, right? Adopt a welding procedure, right? Because there are guidelines for every other welding process that we have, standard welding process. There are guidelines. Out of experience, we know that certain things are not giving us better results. Therefore, it will be instructed that so and so needs to be done and so should be avoided. So you have to adopt a welding procedure, right? That has come out of experience. And use high-speed, moderate penetration electrodes, right? The electrodes that you're using, right? For example, in arc welding, or what do you call, any other welding where you're using electrodes? No, right? Arc welding is that. So, and even what do you call, TIG and MIG welding also, right? Also that counts as arc welding, yes. So in arc welding, you have electrodes, right? So high-speed, moderate penetration electrodes. So high speed in the sense they are able to, I mean, you are able to move them at high speeds, and also the melting takes place at high speed, like that. So that can be done, right, to avoid this warping defect. Well, another thing is undercut or underfill, right? So what is happening is it is not completely, the weld is not complete. You see, some part of it is left. It is not joined these two, right? So this is that portion where the weld was not done properly. You can see how badly it is done. It is not fused the two